It was an unusually cold morning when a sanitation worker named Leo spotted what looked like an old shoebox lying beside a dumpster in the back alley of Holbrook Street, tucked behind the noisy cafes and worn-down shops of the neighborhood, a street most people rushed past without a second glance. Leo, used to seeing discarded clothes, broken electronics, and even forgotten toys, was about to toss the box into the compactor when something made him stop. A faint, high-pitched whimper, so soft it could have been mistaken for the wind rustling through a crack in the building. Curious, and with a growing knot in his chest, he slowly bent down, peeled the damp lid open, and found something that would change the lives of so many in ways no one could have predicted. Inside, barely the size of a loaf of bread, was a tiny, trembling puppy. Its fur matted, body freezing, and ribs painfully visible under its thin skin. What struck Leo the most wasn't just the puppy's fragile condition, but the expression in its eyes. Not fear, not confusion, but a silent, desperate plea for someone, anyone, to care. Taped to the inside of the lid was a piece of paper, crumpled and tear-stained, scrawled with shaky handwriting. "I'm sorry. She's all I have left. Please help her. Her name is Ember." Leo's hands shook as he called the local rescue team, who responded within minutes, led by a compassionate handler named Tessa. When Tessa arrived, she expected to find an abandoned puppy and perhaps another tragic backstory, as many in this line of work sadly do. But what they uncovered over the next few hours would send shockwaves through the entire community. Ember was not just starved and hypothermic. She had old scars hidden under her fur, signs of long-term abuse, untreated injuries, and a microchip that had been crudely burned, leaving it unreadable. As Tessa wrapped the puppy in a warm towel and held her close, something caught her attention. A strange symbol lightly scratched onto the shoebox's bottom panel, a symbol eerily similar to those seen in reports of illegal underground breeding dens that the authorities had been trying to shut down for years. The box was taken in as evidence, and Ember rushed to the clinic for immediate care. But things became stranger when an anonymous tip was received just 2 hours later, directing the rescue team to a vacant lot on the edge of town. There, hidden beneath a collapsed shed, they discovered what no one could have prepared for. 6 more boxes, each empty, but stained with old blood and remnants of fur, as if other puppies had once been there and never made it out. It was clear now that Ember had escaped something far worse than simple neglect. The community rallied behind her, flooding the rescue center with donations, adoption offers, and volunteers, all touched by the fragile resilience of this one little soul. News stations tried to trace the origins of the note, the handwriting, the boxes, but everything led to dead ends. Meanwhile, Ember slowly healed, physically and emotionally, bonding deeply with a young vet assistant named Sam, who began having recurring dreams of Ember trapped in darkness, clawing her way out toward faint light, as if her spirit was begging not just for rescue, but for justice. One evening, while organizing the supplies donated for Ember, Sam found something taped under the old shoebox that had somehow gone unnoticed. A photo, grainy, torn and stained with something reddish-brown. It showed a group of men standing outside a worn barn, and in the corner, barely visible, was a cage, and what looked like a puppy with the same eyes as Ember, staring directly at the camera. The barn had no visible address, just a number scrawled on a barrel beside it. 73-9 AA. As the team tried to decipher its meaning, the phone rang in the rescue office, an untraceable call, and a modulated voice whispered, "You weren't supposed to find her. Leave it alone or she disappears again." The line went dead. Sam, Tessa, and Leo sat in silence. Who were these people? What had Ember escaped from? And most chillingly, what else was hidden inside those abandoned boxes that the team hadn't found yet? As the days passed, the unease that had crept into the hearts of those caring for Ember refused to fade, especially for Sam, who found himself growing increasingly protective of the tiny German Shepherd pup that had unknowingly walked out of the shadows of an unspoken nightmare. The mysterious photo taped under the shoebox kept haunting his mind, the men standing proudly like hunters in front of their grim trophy. A barn surrounded by shadows, a cage in the corner, and that haunting gaze from a puppy with Ember's unmistakable eyes. He couldn't sleep properly anymore. Not because of Ember's care, she was healing remarkably, but because something deeper, something darker, seemed to be unraveling behind the surface of this innocent rescue story. Tessa, the rescue team leader, had already handed over the shoebox and the photo to the local authorities, but the detective assigned to the case, a man named Reagan, had grown quiet. Too quiet. When Sam tried calling for updates, the front desk said Detective Reagan had been transferred to another department just 2 days ago, without warning or paperwork. At the same time, an anonymous donation was made to the rescue center. $10,000 in cash, no name attached, just a note that read, "For Ember's future, no questions." The envelope had no fingerprints, and the bills were all old and untraceable. Sam felt his skin crawl. He and Tessa agreed they couldn't let this go. They made copies of the photo and began asking around discreetly, starting with old farmhands and transport drivers who might recognize the building in the background. Finally, an elderly trucker named Hank, who often delivered hay to rural barns, pointed out the number on the barrel in the photo, 73-9A, as a zoning code used decades ago for land on the outskirts of a place called Willow Pines, now abandoned after a series of mysterious arson cases. The town, once known for its small ranches, was now overrun by weeds, collapsed barns, and whispers of buried secrets. Sam's gut told him they had to go. They didn't tell the police this time, not after Reagan vanished. Instead, they borrowed one of the center's transport vans and drove down to Willow Pines, with Ember safely in a crate between them, curled up and calm, as if she somehow knew they were heading toward the place where her past waited. The town was eerie, silent except for crows and wind sweeping through burnt trees. Then they found it, a barn matching the photo, half collapsed but still standing. And there, just as in the picture, was a rusted barrel with 73-9A still faintly visible. As they approached, Ember suddenly began whining, not in fear but with a sense of urgency. Her little body trembled, and her paws pressed against the crate's door. Tessa opened it, and Ember bolted, not away but toward the barn's foundation, where rotting wooden planks barely covered what looked like a trap door. Sam pried it open, and a waft of stale, chemical-laced air escaped. What they saw beneath shook them. A narrow staircase leading underground, lined with wire cages, some broken open, others still latched, and in one of them, a dirty blanket and remnants of chewed rubber bones, a makeshift puppy mill, underground, hidden from the world. Tessa held her breath, stepping carefully as Ember moved ahead, guiding them like a ghost, retracing her old steps. At the end of the corridor, they found a room with scorched walls, as if someone had tried to burn evidence, but missed one thing. In the corner, a metal filing cabinet lay tipped over, and inside it were folders, dozens of them, marked with dates, weights, breeds, even prices. It wasn't just about cruelty. It was a business, a ring. Ember's name wasn't in there, but Shepherd F03 was, a female pup marked as unsellable, untrainable temperament, scheduled for disposal on the very day Ember was found in the shoebox. Sam nearly dropped the folder. Ember had been dumped not because she wasn't loved, but because she wasn't profitable. She wasn't weak. She was defiant. She had survived. They took everything they could carry and left just before sunset. But as they reached the van, Sam noticed something in the rearview mirror. A man in a green cap. Watching them from the tree line, he didn't approach, didn't speak, just watched. Sam locked the doors and drove away without a word. Back at the rescue center, things escalated fast. The folders were turned over to a trusted federal agent named Maria Sloan, who had been investigating a series of illegal dog trafficking operations for years with little evidence, until now. But the danger wasn't over. That night, someone broke into the center, not to steal, but to leave a message. The reception area had been trashed, Ember's crate was wide open, and in the middle of the room, a shoebox had been placed neatly on the floor. Inside was a photo of Sam and Tessa at the barn, with a red X drawn over Ember's face. Ember, however, was safe. She had crawled under the kitchen sink and remained hidden until sunrise. The threat was clear. But they couldn't stop now. With the FBI involved and media interest growing, the story exploded. Ember became a symbol not just of rescue, but of survival against an unseen darkness. People across the country began sharing similar sightings, old photos, even anonymous leads tied to similar boxes found in alleys. Ember's eyes were everywhere, on posters, on headlines, in children's drawings. The once fragile puppy abandoned in a shoebox had sparked a movement. Yet, as Ember finally began sleeping peacefully beside Sam at night, no longer trembling, one question kept him awake. Who is the man in the green cap? And how many more Embers were still trapped in the shadows, waiting to be found before it's too late? The morning after the break-in, Sam walked into the center with bloodshot eyes and a heart pounding like thunder. Ember, curled tightly beside him in the back seat, lifted her head and let out a soft, uncertain whimper. She had sensed it too, the fear, the tension, the weight of something unfinished. The rescue center was still a mess. Police tape covered the entrance, and technicians were dusting for fingerprints, though Sam knew they wouldn't find any. Whoever left the box knew how to disappear. But what made Sam's stomach twist wasn't just the photo with the red X over Ember's face. It was what was underneath it. A tiny plastic dog tag, cracked and covered in dirt. It wasn't Ember's. This one had a name etched into it. Kilo. Sam showed it to Tessa, who instantly recognized the name. Kilo had been rescued from a hoarding situation 3 years ago, but he'd disappeared from the foster system without a trace. His file said, adopted, but there was no adoption form, no contact details, just a note saying he was transferred to a private handler. That was the first real clue. Agent Maria Sloan confirmed their fears later that afternoon. Kilo's microchip had pinged 6 months ago at a vet clinic near a warehouse in Nebraska, an area linked to a series of animal trafficking tips that had never been fully investigated. And then Ember did something that made everyone stop. As Sam laid the cracked dog tag near her, Ember walked over and sniffed it. She froze. Then, with a low growl, she turned and pawed at the door. Not to play, not for attention, but with a clear message. We have to go. That evening, the team packed a van. Sam, Tessa, Agent Sloan, and 2 trained rescue officers. They didn't have warrants yet, only suspicions. But what they did have was Ember. And she wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a guide. When they arrived at the warehouse under cover of night, Ember's behavior shifted. She was tense, alert, tail stiff but eyes sharp. And then she pulled hard toward a side fence with a gap just large enough for her to squeeze through. The team followed her around back, and that's when they heard it. A faint, high-pitched yelp, then another, then dozens. Sam's heart nearly burst. From inside the warehouse, dogs were barking, and as they reached the loading door, the night air was shattered by blinding lights, spotlights from hidden patrol cars snapping on like judgment. They weren't the only ones who had come for the dogs that night.